Hello, Threadheads! You survived Thanksgiving. How about we make a little affirmation for ourselves? How about we make a patch? So these are in our drop today. Seal of motherfucking approval, because you earned it. You didn't argue with Uncle Ted about politics. You didn't drop the turkey. You survived all the family drama. So I think you've earned this. So I want to talk a little bit about materials before we get to the good stuff of actually putting these together. There are a lot of ways to make patches out of a lot of different materials. There are materials that are used by commercial embroiderers that are like 100% polyester twill with heavy coated heat backings that they can use their industrial presses to make stick to things. I'm going a little more simple route. We're using the faux marrow edge that you've seen on some of our other designs. And in order to do that, we are going to use water-soluble stabilizer. There are some people who recommend using a clean, very clean tearaway, and then when you hit the edge with a lighter to burn away any little fuzzies that remain. But I don't want to be responsible for you playing with fire. So I'm going to show you how to do this with water-soluble stabilizer. And I'm going to use denim because almost everybody can get a hold of denim. Some of the twills that work really well for this are harder to find. And I mean, I think we all have jeans we can't fit into anymore. So whether you make it from old jeans or you buy denim at the fabric store, denim is a really good starting point when you're learning to make patches. So let's get started. Alrighty, the first thing you're going to do is what? You are going to print out your color stops so that you can follow along and keep track of where you are. For a patch, first one is a position stitch that tells you where to put down your patch material. Okay. Second one, material applique, is going to tack down your material. Third one is going to apply your patch edge, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And we'll talk about why we're stitching that first. And then the rest of these are all of your design. Okay. All right, let's talk materials. So I've chosen materials that I think you can get your hands on that will make this project easier for you and that will give you the best chance of success. There are all kinds of different materials you can use to make patches, but for this project I wanted to keep it simple and straightforward for you. So what I have here is 2 layers of a water-soluble stabilizer. This brand is called H2O. And I've also seen it called Vilene. It's water soluble, but it looks like more like a regular stabilizer, and that's what you want. You don't want the plasticky kind that we use as a topper. Okay, I've taken 2 layers of this because we're going to stitch the edge of the patch first to keep things from shifting around on us, and we want it to be able to take that much punishment from the needle. So I've run stop 1, which is my position stitch. That tells me that my fabric needs to cover this. This piece of fabric for this patch is about 5 by 5 3/4 or 5 by 4 3/4. I happen to have a 4 3/4 strip of denim, and so I tend to give myself on patches a little extra room because when I'm trimming them in the hoop, it's really helpful to have something to hold on to. So I'm just going to pop a couple of pieces of tape in here so it doesn't, woo, see? So it doesn't do that. So it doesn't flop around while I'm trying to get it under the needle. And as I mentioned, I'm just using a heavyweight black denim. You could use old jeans for this and they would work just fine. What you want to be sure to do is place your denim so that the diagonal ridges are facing up towards you. The back of a denim looks more like a plain weave. You want that facing down because this is the right side where you've got the diagonal lines. All right, I'm going to go tack this down. and then we'll talk about some hints for how to cut this out in the hoop successfully. All right, we have completed our position stitch. We have put our material over it and completed the applique stitch, or the tack down stitch. We're going to get ready to do the edge stitch, but first we need to cut away the excess fabric. So let me get my favorite scissors. I'm actually going to bring a couple pair over here because precision matters in this. Now, on some other designs, I've occasionally used pre-cut templates and made those available to you so you could pre-cut by hand your design. I haven't done it here because in working with these fabrics, I found that it was just really tricky for me to get the kind of precision that I needed to get a nice edge on it. And I'll talk more about that as I'm cutting, but I made the decision that I think you'll be more successful if you cut it in the hoop. Cutting in the hoop takes a little practice, so just be patient with yourself. I've gotten better at it just over, the last few months when I really started playing with the faux marrow edge that we're going to do on this patch. So it's tacked down. I want to show you something on the back. You can see that there are actually two lines of stitching. There's your original placement stitch, which is on the outside. And then there's this tack down stitch, which is on the inside. It's inset just a little bit. That's to give you a little bit of room for trimming in the hoop. So let's see, I think I usually go in here on this one. I will talk a little bit, but then I'm going to be quiet because I'm probably going to want to speed this up for you so you don't have to watch it in torturous slow motion. So I'm just going to kind of cut my way in here. Now, I like to use a thread that matches the fabric for this part, or a thread that matches the edge I'm going to put on the fabric. I probably should have used the latter because then you'd be able to see it better. But I think once I bring it up toward the camera, you'll be able to see it. So let me get a little bit cut here. And I'm keeping the big spade part of my blade, or the duckbill part of my blade, down against here so I avoid cutting those tack down stitches. If you cut the tack down stitches, it's not the end of the world, but what can happen is little frayed bits can start poking up, and then when you lay down your edge, you'll see them kind of, not necessarily sticking through the edge, but it just kind of makes for a rougher, less even looking border on your patch. So, and I often bring this up quite close so I can see it and angle it in proper lighting, which is a little bit tricky here. So what I want to have happen is I want to be able to see my original placement stitch line, that larger line. There it is. If I can't see that, I haven't cut close enough. If I cut the stitching of my tack down, I've cut too much. And like I said, this is pretty, it's just the nature of that edging, that it is pretty, come on you, there we go. There I can see it. It's a pretty fine line. And if you start getting a lot of fluffies in your way, pick them up with blue tape, get them out of your way so you can see what you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to cut around here, and unlike with vinyl, you can't really slide on this heavy of fabric unless you got magic scissors, which I don't. Okay. Now I'm going to come back along here and look for little areas where it might be protruding a little bit over that line, and I'm using my little nippers, my double curved scissors, to kind of come in there and clean it up even a little better. And I'm looking for loose threads like that one that are going to maybe stick out when I do my edge. All right, so I'm going to put this up close and see if you can see. I can see it in real life. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I can see the very edge of that placement stitch. The faux marrow edge is going to fall like a needle's width outside that placement stitch. All right, now I'm going to be quiet so that I can fast forward this. So you can see me do it, but you won't have to suffer through here. Sorry, keep on that with me. Okay, that was me just using tape to pull off some of the little fuzzies so that they don't get inadvertently stitched into the project. And I'm just kind of looking now with my little scissors to see if there's anywhere where I don't have a visual on the that original placement line. It's okay if it's not perfectly. You can see I came in a little bit more here than here. Same thing over here. That's okay. There is some forgiveness in this edge, but you just don't want it hanging all the way over. So here's another trick. Turn it over. And now, especially if you put a light under that, you're going to be able to see anywhere that fabric is poking over the edge of your placement stitch. And I can see, actually I think I did pretty good. Maybe just a tiny bit right in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in this way. Oh yeah, I can see it there. See that little bit? And get that like this. All right. Okay. Beautiful. Again, I don't want these sticking out of any of the embroidery and having to go after them with tweezers later. I'm going to lay that down and see if I can get it to be caught in the zigzag. All right, so next I'm going to go back over to the machine and I'm going to stitch the edging. And I should also mention that now that you're ready to do the edge, you want to put matching thread in your bobbin. This stop takes quite a while to stitch. If you are a brave soul who leaves your machine to its own devices, like I do, you will want to wait until it'll stitch twice around with just a normal little bitty zigzag, and then it will start the edge. You want to wait until you see how that zigzag falls before it starts the edge, before you walk away. So I'm going to go stitch part of stop 3, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm looking for to make sure that that edge works just right. And here's what I want you to look. You get your first round of zigzag done, pause the machine, pull out your hoop, get it where you can see it, and then you're looking for little spots where the fabric or a thread is protruding. Yeah, there we go. Try not to cut your stabilizer. That would not be good. Here is, and it's easier sometimes to go from the middle of the hoop out. Here's a little spot with a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm going to just trim that as close as I can. The finished stitch will come along just outside that edge. And the other thing to keep in mind is, depending on the fabric content you're working with, if you're working with poly, you can melt away any little bits. If you're careful, you can melt away any little bits that might be hanging out past the stitching. And I don't have it in my hand right now, but I think my tweezers would be helpful. Okay. All right. Here's that. This is that little bugaboo area I was having trouble with trimming. That's all right. We can get it. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. All right. Get the little boogers out of there. I anticipate that I may have a little trouble right there, but I think it'll be okay. All right. So now I'm going to go do my second round of zigzag, continuing on stop 3, and see if I get any better coverage in those areas. And then I'll let you take a peek before I let it start stitching the actual edge. Okay, So it's looking pretty good here. I may have a little bit of black showing here when I'm all done, but I'm not too worried about that. There's a little guy right there that wants to stick out. He may or may not get caught in the final stitch, so I'm going to kind of come in here with my curved scissors and just kind of nip him off there. And same thing up here. You know, you don't have to get it absolutely perfect, but if you can without causing any other problems, you might as well get it to be as close as you can. All right, I'm going to go stitch this edge at 350 stitches per minute on this Ancient Baby Lock. That's going to be about 10 minutes from now. But I'll come back and show you the edge, and then we'll stitch out the rest of the design. Okay, our edge is stitched. Now, the reason I did this first in the design instead of last is to really make sure that this fabric is stabilized, that it's going to be less likely to draw up as the design is stitching, and we are less likely to have registration problems because we're stitching the tack down and the edge pretty much at one go. So that's the edge, and these are the rest of the steps for the design. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this back on the machine, run these steps, and then I'll come show you how to deal with the water-soluble stabilizer. Okay, here is our seal of motherfucking approval, and I'm going to try to catch, here I'm going to pull this out from the camera for a minute so I don't goof it up. This is the only jump that really shows in the word motherfucking. The rest kind of just sink down into the fill below, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and cut that one guy without cutting the fill. Okay, I have popped this out of the hoop. I've cut the one little jump stitch right there between the N in motherfucking and the apostrophe, just because that's the only one that's really very visible. The rest just kind of sink down into the fill behind them. And now I'm going to cut this. I like to rough cut out first just so I'm not having so much stuff in my way. Okay. I will try not to be too rough and end up messing something up. Then I'm just going to come in here and just cut close as I can without risking nipping the edge. If you nip the edge, you will be very sad. So and you will say lots of things like motherfucking. So it's better to leave a little extra stabilizer than it is to try to get too close and end up cutting your project. And we're going to get the rest of this off. This is why I like the water soluble. I've heard of people using like a good tearaway that tears cleanly. There are some that tear more cleanly than others. And then if there's any little white fuzzies, or if you're using a black background, you could use a black tearaway. If there's any little fuzzies sticking out from the marrow edge, you can singe them with a lighter and they just kind of disappear. I have not been comfortable enough in my motor skills to attempt that. I use lighter for other things, like singeing the edges of ribbons and stuff, ends of ribbons and stuff, but I think this is a more surefire way of having success, which is why I'm showing you this method. Okay, now, you do not want this stabilizer stuff on your cutting mat or anywhere. It gets really sticky. I have a designated toothbrush for this, and what I'm going to do is come in and use that toothbrush to wet the edge. Okay, like so. So if you're going to be putting this, well, we'll talk about iron-on, etc. in a moment, but if you're going to be sewing this onto a garment or a backpack or something like that, the rigidity that you need to keep the patch from, you know, getting misshapen and stuff is going to be partly in adhering it to that base fabric. Because we're basically removing all the stabilizer, which is one of the reasons I like to use denim for this. You can use lighter weight twills, and there are a number of special twills that are used by commercial embroiderers that are great, but you typically have to order them from a special place, and the iron-on ones that commercial embroiderers use, we can't iron those on with our standard irons. They won't, they don't get hot enough, there's not enough pressure. I would rather take one for the team and have to sew it on, and generally if I can reach it, I'm going to do that with my sewing machine, than have to deal with it coming off later. So that's my thing. But here's a couple things you can get. So there's a sticky stuff called Badge Magic. It comes in sheets, and it is uber sticky. You want to, if you're going to use that, you want to make sure you clean the back of the water-soluble stabilizer off the back of your patch, because whatever it sticks to on the back of your patch is what it's adhered to. So in that case, I might even like run this underwater and just really saturate it and get the stabilizer out of there. So especially if the thing that it's on might be washed at some point. It's super sticky on both sides. It has paper on both sides. And then what I do is I just pop a little piece of it in a hoop on stabilizer and run that first placement stitch. That will, with no, you don't even need thread in there. Just run it so that you've got these little perforated holes, and then you can cut on those perforated holes and get it to exactly fit your patch. So that's one option. And then the other options are iron-ons. And again, you want to try to get all of anything that could go away when you wash it. If it's going to be on something washable, make it go away before you put the fusible on. But there are double-sided fusibles that you can use that will, for which a home iron will be hot enough. So I'm looking at this patch and I'm feeling it super duper sticky. So a lot of times after I'm done with this part, I will go ahead and get a little bowl of water and just kind of swish it in there to get this off. Because what will happen is if it still feels super sticky, when that dries, your patch will get really stiff. Not the end of the world, perhaps, but if it gets wet, I don't want it getting all yucky and sticky again. Alrighty, I hope you really like this design, and I hope that you are able to give this to folks and let them feel nothing but your motherfucking approval. So I think you're going to have a great time making a patch that's as motherfucking awesome as you are. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to check the description for the link to our Facebook group if you're not already a member. That's where you'll find freebies, discounts, and notices of sales first. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and we'll see you next time.